So in this video we're going to go through taking an NMR spectrum. So the NMR spectrometers that we have in the lab are these two. These are known as benchtop NMRs. They're much smaller than normal NMRs. Normal NMR is about as tall as a person. Now these don't do as much overall, but they do everything that we need for the purposes of our lab. The main piece that we work with is this cartridge, and you can see the syringe coming out of it. And I have another one of them here to show you what this looks like. So two things that are sort of advantageous about these instruments. One is that overall they're a lot cheaper than normal NMRs. 50 to 60,000 compared to 300,000. But the other thing is the only piece that we really ever use that we work with is this piece. And so if anything ever goes wrong on these instruments, from injecting a sample, this is the piece that might have to be replaced, and it's relatively inexpensive in comparison to the instrument. Again, these instruments probably run 50 or 60,000, and this runs just a couple $100. But what you can see is, you can see on the instrument we have an in and we have an out, and it's basically a loop. So you can see the tubing that comes out, and that's where your sample goes in. It goes into this tube, and it's just a loop. It goes down through here and comes out the other side. So the sample I'm going to run today is going to be a liquid. I'm going to do that for convenience. If we're using a liquid sample, we don't need to do anything to prep it. All we need to do is inject it straight into the instrument. For solid samples, you need to dissolve them, and you need to dissolve them as concentrated as possible. So here I just have a 1 milliliter syringe. I filled it up part way. We don't need a lot. But it's also important to note that I'm using a blunt tip and not a sharp pointed needle on here. So that goes in here into the inlet. This adapter piece that the needle fits into is not securely in right now. So what I do is push the syringe all the way in and then tighten it. At that point I can inject the sample, and when I do that, any old sample that's already in the instrument just gets pushed out this tube. Alright, once I've done that, I come over to the software, and you may or may not be able to see this well. I've got all the blinds closed, but it's still giving me a lot of glare here. But we come over here, click on Methods, and 1 pulse. And then I'm going to change the number of scans to 8, and hit Go. And it'll take about a minute. It'll run those 8 scans, but as soon as one of them does, as you can see, spectrum already starts to appear on screen. And you can see down at the bottom, we've got about a minute left to finish this. And as it takes each additional scan, you may notice that the spectrum on screen is updating. We won't see a huge difference with each additional scan for what we're doing today, because when we use a liquid sample like this, the liquid is 100% our compound that we're getting a spectrum of. If you were running a diluted sample, what you might see is that your peaks start out very small, and as each scan is taken, they start to get larger. So we have just 1 scan left, and now it's done. At this point, we're ready to process the data, and we do that in another piece of software. So we click on Save As. We get our file down here, which we can open up, or we used to be able to do that. So we need to open our MNOVA software, and then we need to open that file up within MNOVA, and we go through a series of processing steps. They're going to be tough to see on camera, so I'm not going to do them here, but you'll see them in your instructions, which you find in the back of the lab manual. And hopefully the next time when we meet here in person, I'll go through these more carefully in person.